Hello everyone. Welcome to the English usage lecture. The topics that we will be covering today are clauses, analogy, and vocab based usage. Now, typically, the coverage of English usage in CAT is around 5% of the paper. So, around 2 to 3 questions every year we can expect from English usage. The type of questions have dramatically changed from conventional vocab based questions like synonym antonyms to questions today which today test you on a lot of usage understanding inferences and at the same time understanding the structures of different sentences, whether a sentence fits in a certain structure, whether a phrasal verb fits in or not. So the whole bunch of English usage is around structure and context. So let's deep dive into some of the more important concepts and see what's in store ahead. So, if I were to understand English usage from a perspective of words, sentences, and phrases, I would say that it tests the candidate on the meaning, usage, and context of the vocabulary. And context is a word that we will be focusing a great deal going ahead in this lecture. Now, these questions also kind of become more challenging if the student is not aware of the minute differences. Now, if the differences are not clear, then the student will not be able to do justice with the English usage. Like, for example, let's take a simple word like practice with a C and practice with an S. So the one with a C is always used as a noun. The one with an S is always used as a verb. Now, if I'm not aware about these minute differences, I might end up using the wrong word in the wrong place and therefore my usage will be incorrect. So that's why contextual English vocabulary is absolutely important when we are dealing with English usage. And as I've already told you that context is more important than literal meaning. CAT over the years doesn't really focus on literal meaning. Here the contextual usage of a word in a sentence is the one that's going to really help you to ace these questions. Let's look at a question and understand what is this context that we are referring to. Let's say many of the students at a high school thought the computer club was for nerds. Now, if I just know the word, I would say that nerds refers to a foolish, inept, or an unattractive, socially awkward individual. So, but in this question, it seems to be many of the students at high school thought the computer club was for nerds. In this context, nerd would mean an intelligent, single-minded expert in a particular technical field. Now, as you see, that the literal meaning can be different than contextual meaning. So, since there is a difference, we always prefer contextual meaning, and therefore, from the context, it seems, so it can't be cheaters, it can't be pranksters, it can't be dull, it has to be an expert. So nerds basically are experts or intelligent people who particularly excel in a particular field or a profession. And that's just one example which shows how contextually vocab has changed over the years in terms of replacing traditional ways of literal understanding to contextual vocabulary. Let's go ahead and understand a bit more in terms of how is vocabulary the key facet of improving your English usage. Now, improving vocabulary has been one of the biggest problems that test takers have had over the years. Now, obviously, easier said than done, but improving vocabulary today is much more beyond reading just dictionaries or books and so on. So in an attempt to improve vocabulary, I suggest a 5-step approach. Step number 1 is you have to read a lot. There's no way to improve vocabulary if you don't read. So when you say reading, it could be anything under the sun, and this is what we also discussed while we were doing the intro. It could be books, it could be novels, it could be magazines, online content, it could be white papers, it could be specialized area of research that you can read. The idea is to read crisp, to read daily, and to have a good understanding of different varied materials that you read. The more you read, the higher are the chances that you, even if you don't recognize a word from the meaning per se, but you might be able to pick it up from a contextual perspective. So reading, absolutely important from vocab standpoint. The second approach that we'll follow to improve vocabulary are called flashcards. Now, flashcards typically you can find it easily, very good to remember words on the go. So if you're traveling, if you're free for some time, you can just use flashcards and it helps you to retain a lot of words. Like that, a simple game like crosswords also helps you to really retain a lot of words and learn new words all the time. Another thing which I find very useful in today's day and age are called the online apps. Now, online apps, something like dictionary.com, vocab.com, powervocab.com, do not just only focus on the words and their meanings. They also give you a list of synonyms and antonyms. And the synonyms and antonyms form a combination of words which can be used in similar references as and when needed. And that brings me to my fourth approach, which I personally use a lot, which is called the clustering method. Now, this clustering method is a method in which you cluster a set of words independent of each other, but they mean the same. I might not know the minute differences, but if I have a clustering in my head, I will know that all these words kind of refer the same. Let's take an example. If I were to use a word like boycott or shun or ostracize or repudiate or banish. Now, all these words, there would definitely be some literal differences between amongst all these words. But on the top, all of them refers to some form of rejection and humiliation. So if I just know the words from this level of clusters, I will always remember that these words have something to do with rejection and humiliation. Again, so these words also kind of give me the feeling that whenever I'm looking at these words, it has to be related to the overall idea of rejection and humiliation. And that's a very, very strong technique, especially when you're trying to do questions around analogies or fill in the blanks. The last way of improving vocabulary. So the art of using words in a daily life is very important, especially when you understand that retention is the key through which you will improve vocabulary. Let's look at few examples. Like at a very basic level, if I were to understand the art of using the words in daily life, I'll start by replacing few of the words which I use on everyday level. Like for example, the word very, a word which we use daily for everything. For example, if we say very hot, can I replace it by saying scorching? If I say very cute, can I replace the word by saying adorable? Can I replace very happy with something like elated? Now, these are small examples which just show that how do you use these words in a day-to-day life can really impact the way you learn and remember more words. Let's proceed and go to the next part. Here, what we want to do is understand few approaches for contextual vocabulary. So first is obviously, and that we have talked on length, is how to focus more on context rather than on literal meaning. So contextual vocabulary, extremely important, especially when you're looking at a word. Don't just blindly trust the literal meaning. Ensure you understand the scope, the meaning to derive the contextual understanding. Second is pay attention to connectors, both positive and negative. And this is a very important point. Like connectors are basically words which help to join or form sentences in some meanings. Like for example, if I were to look at positive connectors and negative connectors. So positive connectors could be word like and, as well as like. So negative connectors would be words like but, yet, although. Now these connectors basically tell me the type of flow in terms of the sentence. Like if it's a positive connector and I have a word like this, I'll know that the sentence will end up using similar words and similar ideas. But if it's a negative connector and you have words like but, yet, although, I'll know that the next set of words will be opposite to the words being used, and therefore all the more chances that the next word has to be an opposite. So your connectors, your positive and negative connectors really help you to understand the set of sentences or words which are forming a particular paragraph. So understanding the overall context is very similar to the context part of it, that to guess the meaning of unknown words, it's very important for me to understand the overall part of the passage and not just look at passage from a single perspective. So once I look at from an overall perspective, it really helps me to guess the meaning of unknown words. Pay attention to the author's word choice in terms of meaning, style, and tone. So typically in vocabulary, another thing which we'll have to really drill down is the understanding of tones. How authors talk, what kind of emotions do they exuberate? So in terms of emotion level, our words, our selection will also change. So typically for us, a word for a term like sarcastic, I can't end up using a positive word. I'll have to use a word which has a sarcastic undertone to it. So similar sentences like sardonic or satire are good choices when we are doing sarcastic undertones. And last but not the least, the most important, learn to eliminate options. Any option, any word that does not fit into the context, that has to be eliminated and to arrive at the right answer. So I hope this intro so far in terms of understanding contextual vocabulary, different approaches, and what kind of methods we need to apply in terms of increasing our vocabulary has helped you to at least get a good grasp of what English usage means at a broad level. In the upcoming lectures, we'll see some questions around English usage. Hope to see you soon on those lectures. And thank you very much for your time.